Hello and welcome to C3 Part 4 of Key Digital's Compass Control online training curriculum. In C3 Part 4, Compass Navigator's interactive GUI elements, we will discuss with you and teach you how to implement sliders, which have become a very popular gesture control of iOS and smart devices. Where you can simply drag your finger, and sliders are typically, epitomized, let's say, for control of lighting, volume control, etc. Okay, so audio devices and lighting integration systems, thermostats, etc. And we'll also teach you how to implement the embedded web app feature supported by Compass Control. And the embedded web app is certainly a very popular feature that has opened up many doors for Compass Control, one of which is the integration and viewing of IP cameras. Anything with the URL address, okay, can be embedded in the iOS device. So again, IP cameras, or DVR, if it has some video to IP conversion boxes, etc., etc. And we also are finding a very practical use with the embedded web app with our support of third-party manufacturers who have an embedded web app. Those are ranging from security integration systems to audio products, and especially media servers are also featuring these days an embedded web app. And as long as you have that IP address that you could enter in there and the iPad on the same network, you are able to capitalize on that and embed that into your system. And those, of course, go in addition to simple interactive web pages where you could have search panels, and you could actually, the user can place their finger in that search panel cell and have the keyboard type pop up and begin to type away at what you're trying to search for. Videos, YouTube videos, which are probably most applicable to commercial accounts if they want to have their video commercial playing on the iPad. That is possible, and also even having a news stream running if you find a nice news page, and actually that is what we'll be showing you with the examples that we have today. So again, thank you very much for joining us on C3 Part 4, and without further ado, we'll get started. And to teach you about sliders, it's really, there's a foundation of knowledge that must first be established about RS-232 commands with a local variable. Okay, local variables are can be seen in many devices. Again, especially those that that I discussed, where you really epitomize the use of a slider, such as a lighting control, audio control, volume control devices. And we're looking here at a Compass Alliance partner that is Lutron, and I'm looking at a sample library here that has our dimmer 1, which has been identified as ID number 8, and you have off, on, and volume P1. Okay, P1, it means parameter. There is one parameter in this RS-232 command. And what is that parameter there? Well, the parameter means that it's going to be specified, that value is going to be specified somewhere throughout our programming, throughout our control interface. For example, here, dimmer 1 or ID number 8 set to a level P1, parameter 1. And so, for example, with our slider, it will tie in with our slider, and that parameter 1, be it 00 through 99, for example, that value is going to be determined by the position that we set that slider into through our slider control with, a flick of the finger. Okay, and it is certainly possible as well to have your parameters in other positions. For example, if we look at the Common or All tab here in this library, we see, for example, dimmer P1. So instead of having the ID determined, we have a parameter that determines what dimmer we're looking at, and that parameter is most typically determined by, say, what zone you're in your project. And as you have perhaps that nice list that we feature in so many of our products that we market, where you have the zone list that allows you to flick, and you see this in our demo project. You have that is a list after all, just like we've taught you how to implement in C3 Part 3. You have that list that allows you to say, I'm in zone 1, zone 2, zone 3, zone 4, and you tie that in with a variable. For example, we commonly refer to it as a selected zone variable, and we'll teach you more of implementing variables in future trainings here, or you could study the demo project and see it firsthand. But if you have a selected zone variable and it says I'm in list position 1, that therefore my variable, my selected zone variable, equals 1. If I'm in list position 2, aka zone 2 on that list, because I've flicked across, well then my selected zone variable equals 2, and that perhaps could populate the value, can determine the value and manipulate the value of the parameter 1 in this command, which again is what zone are we in, or which ID of the dimmer do we wish to control here. And you see, actually, this is a command with 2 parameters. It is set here, number of parameters is 2. And the second command, where you see the second %d, is going to be the current level set of that dimmer, just as we had shown a minute ago. So this command features two local variables. Local variables meaning there are 2 parameters, and they are determined locally within the control interface by the user. And it's important to know that we are looking at commands here that the %d is a decimal value is going to be inserted there, and or %x would be a hex value inserted there, and it just depends on the language of your device you're controlling, whether it be ASCII or hex or decimal. And you could actually use compass control to say enter a decimal. If you enter %d as in this function data here, entering %d means you're going to provide a decimal, but if the device is a hex format, control format, then actually Compass Control's library will in fact convert your input, which is decimal value, and convert that to a hex value, so that it maybe becomes a little easier for you in your programming, okay, to use 00 through 99 as traditional decimal values versus having to populate all of that in hex value. Okay, so it's important to understand these local variables, and there are many devices throughout the supplied libraries that feature these local variable commands that have at least 1 parameter in them. There are a few key digital devices. If you'd like to use an example there is the KD-MXA 8x8 Pro, which is our audio matrix switcher. That features commands with a single parameter and even commands with 2 parameters. I think that one will max out at 2. And actually, just so you know, %d or %x could mean a single or 2 digits, so 0 through 9 or 0 through 99. 00 through 99, that is, would be identified by a %d. And what if you had the need for 3 digits, 000 through 999, you would use %03d. So you can see where we're going there. If you need 4 digits, 4 zeros through 9,999, you would use %04d, okay, in this function data. So these are local variable commands. They have a parameter that is determined somewhere locally in the control interface, or perhaps just by a variable value, and you are able to tie it in Compass Navigator here, as we will now begin doing. So we're all familiar with this project, and actually we do have in our libraries, as we mentioned in C3 Part 1, we have sliders libraries, but oftentimes I like to work with a group, a slider group that actually gives you not only the slider, but maybe just an up arrow, a down arrow, and an on and an off option as well. And so if we look here, I believe we could jump into iPod. Here we are. Full lighting control group. This is a pretty nice one that we could use and even tie it in with our Lutron device. Okay. Before I drag that in, though, we should in fact add a this Lutron device to our project. So I'm going to go ahead here, program, step back into the system configuration step, jump into our RS-232 library to pull our device from. It is now exiting one folder that is IR and opening another folder that is RS-232. And again, probably happens a lot quicker for you, but we have the video recording software going right now. And now once that is open, the RS-232 library to pull from, then we could go ahead and enter in the appropriate brand name here, which we'll just go ahead and use the one that we just gave you the walkthrough on, which was Lutron. So we are now here in the Lutron library, where we see the Lutron dimmer device here that we had completed our walkthrough on in the RS-232 manager. I am going to apply the appropriate category for this device, which is lighting and shade, before I press the Add Device button. Just as a note here, this Add Lutron button at the top is for bidirectional implementation, which we do have additional videos available for. And now we have the Lutron dimmer in our system. And the next step, we can't just jump right back into our iPad yet, can we? We do have to tell the project which port of the MC2500 this Lutron will be connected to. Okay, so it is an RS-232 device there, so I can just drag it on over to, say, an available RS-232 port, for example, RS-232-0, our main RS-232 port. It is now in place, and now we could go ahead and jump on to, say, user layout number 8 here, and begin dropping this lighting panel in, which I've already completed. So here's our lighting panel. Okay, and where did I find that? Was in the groups library, full light control. Okay, and under the iPod and port tab here. So we have this full light control panel, and we want it to, as we use the slider and even the additional buttons that are in the group, we need it to do what? We need it to determine the value of that specific dimmer. Okay, so first thing we need to do is actually create a simple variable. So this will be an introduction to creating simple variables for you folks, and certainly again more of this will be discussed with you in the next training courses. But for a simple variable, we need a variable that's going to determine that parameter that we discussed there, the local variable. Okay, so we go into our variables tab here, down what usually is open to the control designer page, and here we have our template building project is the project name. I'm just going to hit the blue plus here to create a new variable. And we have the properties that we could call this variable something along the lines of dimmer, maybe dimmer1 variable, okay? However you'd like to refer to it, because if you do have multiple dimmers in the project, you're going to want to have a name that identifies each of those dimmers discretely. So how about dimmer1 value? We know it's a variable, and we could choose here the type of variable this will be. By default, they're string. I'm going to go ahead here and select integer. Integer meaning it is a numerical value without decimal points. That would be a floating. And we could see here the icon now gives us an I, and that adjusts as you adjust it from string. It was S, I, integer, and that helps you to kind of know what type of variables you are looking at. And we could set an initial value here. For example, the initial value really only applies when you if they haven't used compass control or they've completely closed out compass control, maybe they've reset their iPad, or if they just haven't used it for days on end and they've been using other apps in their iPad or iOS device much more frequently. Compass control works just like any other app in the iPad, that eventually it does shut down those apps, or doesn't allow it, if it is a lesser used app, doesn't allow it to consume as much processing as more commonly used apps. Of course, this being the controller for an integration system, that does not happen very often. But when you start compass control, you have an initial value that needs to be set here that these variables will be set at. And since it's lighting, for example, maybe we'll do a 00 here so that it does it defaults to off instead of on, in the case that it needs to reset to that initial value. Here we set the limitations of the variable, and these limitations are going to be exactly as we see, or as the control, the range of this value, this local variable parameter 1 supplies us. For example, 00 through 99, okay? And the location of the variable, okay, this is something that we're not going to explore too much right now utilizing, but your options of inside the controller or shared amongst controllers means, is this variable something that will affect other iPads in the system? So if you have multiple iPads in the system and you do want them to stay in sync with each other, as I'd imagine you most commonly do, then as long as zones are shared and whatnot, then you would go to controller shared. In this case, we could just use controller inside. The other option being in MC, inside the master controller, okay, but this is just going to live in the iPad. And now we have our variable established, everything, all the properties of that variable. And now that we've added and defined the properties of this variable, we can add additional elements or events and actions to the variable, because this variable needs to be pointed at the bulb and the slider need to be pointed at the variable. So for example, we can add an event and action to this variable by, here we select it, we see there are no events and actions currently. When we add an event and action to a variable, there's really only one option, which is change values, because the variable gets manipulated by external settings, doesn't it? So we have a change value event here, and there are really two things we're going to add here. The first of which is we're going to add an RS-232 command to this value. So as this, to this variable. So as this variable is manipulated and is, say, set from the volume or the value set 80, like we see on the slider here now before our eyes, and then it drops down to 40, we need to be sure that an RS-232 command is executed. So we're going to add an RS-232 command here, to this variable, and we're able to identify the device that we wish to control here, which will be Lutron dimmer. And we are able to identify the command that we are sending. So we could go here, we know this was output 1, which was our ID number 8 of the system. So this correlates to the tabs that we saw in the library for the product as we're in the RS-232 manager. And we could select our command that we wish to work with, which was our level set, or volume as it's referred to here, P1. Now, because there is P1, you see what happens is I select this command is now the properties here, the additional work panel comes up that says parameter 1. What is this parameter? What sets the value of this parameter here? And actually, it is going to be, of course, looped to the variable, right? It's going to be pointed at the variable. So this RS-232 command, if my whatever the value of this variable is what's going to determine this parameter 1 of this RS-232 command. So I select variable here, and I could select the only variable in this system at the time, which is the integer dimmer 1 value variable. So this is our way of pointing this RS-232 command at the variable and pointing the variable back at the RS-232 command to ensure they're in sync. What's missing out of that equation is the slider itself. Okay, so now we need to say as the variable manipulates, it's going to manipulate the graphical appearance of the slider. So we're going to add a GUI element change to this variable as well. And first thing we're going to do here is we are going to, this is a value set graphical user or interface, and we are going to identify the slider. Okay, very important to identify the slider, not the group of the slider. So again, the naming of these elements becomes again of the utmost importance, and we could actually see here what the name of that is if we expand our full lighting control group. So let's go ahead and do that. We have a list here, meaning we could have multiple bulbs in that position. Maybe as you go zone to zone to zone, you'd like to sync this list with your zones. And right now it's populated with only one group. And here we are. It tells us that the name of this slider itself is Light Zero Lamp Slider. Okay, and you can see the icon there that really indicates it being a slider. Okay, so let's go in back to that value variable, and we're determining what we are manipulating here, what graphical user element we are manipulating, which is called Light Zero Lamp Slider. Okay, and you see the group there. So again, very important, don't select the group. You're actually looking for the slider itself. Here we see it. And what we are determining on this slider is the value. As the variable manipulates, as does the value of this slider. So we are able to point it, the value, the property of this slider, to the variable as well, just as we did the RS-232 command. And we see there's only one variable in our project at this time. Okay, so now we've got the variable manipulating the value of the slider, and there's just one more step to complete the loop here, which is as we manipulate the slider itself, it needs to set the value of the variable. So we go on over to the slider here, and you probably saw as I clicked this before that there actually are some events and actions already stored in this slider, and you could see, for example, it is tied in with the variable. We're going to go ahead and remove these three things here so we can do them on our own. Now, this is going to be a move value, which again means that as I move or the user moves this slider, events and actions will occur, so we could leave that in place. And we need to point it to our variable. So here, as you saw previously, we were linking to macros or to other elements, event actions, okay? GUI, graphical user interface things we have worked in, the adding if conditions we have worked in, etc., etc. Now RS-232 commands here as well, where we also have IR, IP, relay, adding delays, okay? We're now going to link this slider, events and actions, to our variable. So we choose our variable, and this is going to set the variable, not add or subtract, if you will, from the variable's current position. And we choose our variable, which again, we'll have a short list to choose from right now. It makes things easier as we're just getting started here. And what we are going to do is adjust the value of that variable, aren't we? So we choose the property value. Okay. So now, as we read our variable statement here, it says that basically, as I move this dimmer, this is affecting the variable named dimmer1 value, and the value of this slider is affecting the value. Okay, so we see that there now, and actually that's all you need to do for the slider itself. So we've already looped the variable to the slider. We've come full circle here by making sure that the graphical interface is in sync with the variable by adding our events and actions on the variable itself. We've ensured that the RS-232 command is linked to the variable. Now, one note here about that RS-232 command is that actually there are two places you could insert that RS-232 command, one of which is in the variable itself, the other of which is in the slider itself. Okay, now when would you use each of these? Well, in the project we're showing you here today is an ideal time to add the RS-232 command to the variable because we do not have multiple iOS controllers in this system. So therefore, as the variable is manipulated, it's only executing the RS-232 command once. However, say that we did that shared controller variable property and multiple iOS controllers were manipulating the value of that variable, well then that would mean that every time that variable is manipulated, the RS-232 command is sent, and so you could have multiple commands being executed at the same time to the single device that is the Lutron or whatever device you're controlling there, and that could of course slow down the system and that sort of thing. So in which case it'd probably be better to store the RS-232 command on the event and action of the slider itself, as we're doing right now by pointing with the variable. Okay, so in that case it would be stored here versus in the variable. So we've now adjusted the variable based on the slider. We have some more elements within this group that also would correspond to the value of that Lutron dimmer, and they also have some linkings already and some events and actions already in place there. So I'm just going to select that range and remove them so you could see as we add this fresh. So we'll start with this here on button, which we are going to link to the variable. Okay, and we're going to choose our variable. And when you press the on button, say for example you want it to be full on, right? 100% or 99 as we call it here. So here, this is not a, we're not pointing it to, we're not determining the value of our variable as we did on the slider. Instead, we know that always this is 99 when I press on. It's a constant, okay? And actually, we're going to do the exact same thing with the off button. So I'm going to go ahead and select this event in action line and copy that with Control C. Move on over to my light off button, which again already has its own set of events and actions there, so we could go ahead and remove those. And you could see there that there's even a foreshadowing of what we're going to set this to, where it is not going to be 99 when we press the off button, is it? Instead, this is when we press off, we want that dimmer to move all the way to full 0 value. So that also being a constant, and select 0 or even 00 if you wish. Does not matter. Two more elements within this group are the up button. Let's go ahead and remove all of these events and actions and tie it in with our variable. Now the up button and the down button are not value sets, meaning if I press the +1, it doesn't just set the variable. Instead, it's working with the existing value of that variable and adding to it. So here, this is when you use the value add option here versus value set, okay? And we need to identify our variable that we are adding or even subtracting to. And this will also be a constant, which is +1, right? From the current position, or even +2 if you'd like to move in increments of 2. Now, when it is a positive integer, you do not need to press plus. In fact, it will not work if you do. So let's make it, say, 2, okay? And it assumes it is a positive, okay, versus a negative. And as we now copy this guy here, this event in action line, Control C, we get to move on over to our down button, which will remove all of these commands here and events and actions, and we'll go ahead and Control C, or excuse me, Control V, paste. And here, where in the positive, the up arrow, we didn't have to specify positive. Here we do need to specify -2, for example. Okay, and actually this is everything we need. So we are now able to go ahead and enter our emulator with Control E. And just a note, when you do these things in the emulator mode, usually it takes just one button press to actually sync the variable, the system, okay? So, so I press that off there. You might have to press it twice, and we see it goes all the way down to 0. As we set on, it should move to 99. And we're just moving a little slower because of the software I'm using. And also you'll notice that actually in emulator mode, as we mentioned before, we actually do in fact send the command. So if you're connected to your MC2500, you're on the same network here, you could actually execute commands while emulating here. So, so when we get that failure, notice it is in fact because it did try to actually send those commands. So you could just press OK to work through that. And so we've tested our up, we've tested our down, and now we want to test the up and down arrows, or I'm sorry, our on and off we've tested. So let's go ahead here and click the down, and it should move in increments of 2 as we press that button, from 99 to 97, and then to 95. Okay, and then to 93. Boy, it's really moving slow today with that software, so I apologize. And then, so we verified our up arrow and our down arrow. And now let's go ahead and verify our up arrow. and it does give you this error message, because again it's trying to actually execute those commands. So we press the up arrow. Now it moves from 93 to 95, again in integers of 2 because we had set it as a value add +2 or -2. So now from 95 to 97. And if we, just as a note, if we press that down arrow a number of times here and we get to some lower values in the 80s and whatnot, you'll see that dimmer begin to move or begin to have some empty appearance to it, as it does as you go way down low. So let's see here. There we go. Okay, so that is how your sliders work. And actually, oh, you know what? One thing I haven't done is actually in the emulator here dragged. So you could just choose that line there and press and hold the mouse and slide it on down. There we go, and we could see that working there as well. So we know that it's sending the RS-232 commands, right? Because we've continuously received that error message there. But now we have a fully functional slider group. And of course we do have some simple sliders, just singular sliders without the up, down, on, off buttons. And all of that actually works in much the same way here as what we've created together here today. And the up and down buttons are also ideal places to have repeats stored. And repeat is the green circular icon here that we could add in the events and actions. So how often do we want to repeat it? Well, just depends how fast you want it to move is basically what they're asking you there. Maybe something not too sensitive could be like 0.2 seconds, or maybe something a little more sensitive could be 0.1 second, or even 0.05 second. Remember, we are moving at increments of 2, so it is something that if you have it very fast and your increments are quite large, well, then you're going to be flying through that slider in no time. So let's go ahead and copy that repeat that we have applied to the up position, and let's paste it onto the event in action of the down position. And now it's going to repeat that variable, which is, again, we're manipulating the variable's value by -2 when we press this down. In that variable, we have the RS-232 command. That means we're jumping in variables in increments of 2, and we get to repeat that here by just pressing and holding that button. You'll see the slider before your eyes there slide up or down according to what respective button you are pressing. Now, moving further into Compass Navigator's interactive GUI elements, we're going to now begin implementing an embedded web app. And the embedded web app is something that we do have in our library here, Multimedia Library, okay, as you see across the bottom. So just like we have groups and sliders library, we also have a multimedia library. And actually, we're going to go ahead and open that up now. And actually, it is something that you just drag and drop into the iOS, into the iPad here, for example. And it is not just that easy, unfortunately, but it is still very easy, I promise. But actually, there is a necessary step that you must take first, which is if you want to have it in the main page or in your main controller, that's fine. We're going to enable that for you. But actually, we need to first create a new page to this system that is going to be the open socket to that website, if you will. Okay, it's going to open up in a large size that we'll specify. It's going to leave that connection open, and then when we put it in our main page or somewhere else throughout the control interface, it's going to be we could put it in a smaller size that's really just a scaled sizing of the larger size that we have on our new page we create here. And you'll see what I mean as we build this. So we do need to create a new page. So we go ahead here and we press the blue plus, and we see we now have main page and new page. And this new page I'm going to give a name such as video dummy. Why video dummy? Because this is essentially, I'm going to make it here in this presentation as a page that we're really not going to be navigating within or any of those things. Okay, so now we've named it video dummy. When you add a new page, you can supply an icon to it. For example, virtual page is something we commonly use for macros, a page where we store all of our macros and that sort of thing. I'm just going to choose, say, icon 1, for example. It looks like icon 1 really doesn't have an icon there. So, again, doesn't matter so much. Remote 1, you can see how these icons look. Icon X1 also looks like it's not populated yet. Common, let's see, how does that look for us? Okay, that's what we had initially. Or even V virtual, like I said, we usually use that for macros and whatnot. Well, it just gives you a V. So you could see how those look. And now what's important about this video dummy page is actually it must be in many projects, it's going to have to be the top page in the system. In other words, as things are layered in this tree, that's actually the sequence in which these open. If you were to open up this system, the Compass Navigator app in your iPad, the video page now being on top would open before the main page. And so again, if this is just a dummy page, what I'm going to do actually is right off the bat add an event in action to this page, to the page itself. And on a page, your only option for event in action is a timer, because there's really, we're not pressing anything on we're not pressing the page itself to trigger these events in actions, are we? So we're going to add an event in action. It's a timed event in action. This is going to be a page jump, okay, within this page, and we're going to jump to our main page. Okay, and the main page here, we will set a timer as far as how often or how quickly this is going to happen. So we have here a repeat action, and by the way, this repeat action can also be added to your slider that we did before there, where we have the up and down arrows, and as we showed you there. So there's a few different instances, of course, where you could use the repeat action. And since again this is a page that I'm not really interested in living in and navigating in, I'm just going to make it something very fast. For example, 0.1 seconds before we jump into that main page. So really it's going to be a blink of an eye there. And so now I'm going to jump into my multimedia library. And as we gave you a brief tutorial in C3 Part 1, you know that these web pages and YouTube videos, they're really just examples, and really as we drop them onto our iPad here, you really all that determines what this web page is actually the property we add of the value here. Okay, so right now it says google.com. Okay, so we see that the width is 768, the height is 640, so we know that our iPad is 1024 wide, don't we? And this guy being 768 wide, It's going to be 256. 1024 minus 768. We'll divide that by 2 to bring us 128. So we could put this at the X position, 128. And our height being 640, well, we know that the height of this iPad we're working in here is 640. So we have, the height of the iPad is 768, and we have a height here of 640. So 128 divided by 2 equals 64 on the y-axis. And now I'm able to add the desired web page here that we'd like to jump to. And again, this could be the web page, an actual web page that is somewhat interactive, like we were mentioning at the beginning of this presentation, because you are able to press in, use your finger and press inside cells where you could enter information, have the pop-up keyboard go on screen, that sort of thing. It could be the IP address of your cameras that you may have available to you. It could be the IP address of your media servers or other devices you're working with that have embedded web apps, security system, etc., etc. In this case, we're going to do something that we can all share as you upload this project to your iPad if you have your Compass software license. And this is a nice one I found for news, and that is Reuters.com/news/video. And we could leave the type as web page. You have the option of web page, YouTube player, and live streaming player. Now YouTube is nice because it actually, YouTube videos actually, the video themselves has their own URL, where the page, the entire page, if you were, say, just looking at a YouTube video on your computer, has its own URL as well that contains that video, in fact. But the video itself also has its own unique URL, and so we do give you the option there of using that YouTube player, and it's nice because then you're only looking at the video. When you do a web page, it is the entire web page. And actually what we do in this video dummy page is actually, as we defined our width and height, we actually are taking from the top left corner a sampling of that web page that is 768 pixels wide and 640 pixels in height. Okay, so we're giving ourselves a nice sampling of that web page here. So we'll leave it as web page. And that's why it's important to do this video dummy, because you have the one that is the first page it opens, it's going to open it at that size, at that sampling of the web page, where then we go next and add to the main page, and it is going to be a scaled down version to fit our desired width and height based on our sizing availability on the template. And here we open it first, so we could get a nice, again, large sampling that we crop from the web page. So we choose web page, and we are going to leave that open. And we could call it something here. If you have multiple of these things, you want to give it its own identifier, for example. So we call this Reuters. Okay. And now we already have the event in action again on the video dummy page. We could just take a look at that real quick here just to make sure that's all in place, and we do see it there. And actually that's all we need for our video dummy page. And now we are able to go into our main page and actually add another web app here that is going to be a smaller sampling sizing, if you will, of the socket that we've previously opened in that video dummy page. So we drop it onto the web page here, and we'll apply a much smaller width and height. Let's say, for example, 360 by 240. Let's see, how does that look for us? Okay, that looks approximately where we need to be. We're kind of fighting for space there, though. So let's move it down even a little further here. Say, try to keep that aspect ratio, I suppose. So 216 by 144. How's that look? There we go. It is very small, but kind of shows our point here of how it looks when we condense the size down. When we open in the larger page, we can maybe move this somewhere that gets it off the side there, so close to the side. In fact, one of the next exercises we're going to do is adding that left panel that I happen to know has a width of 70, and we could apply the name here as well, Reuters, and the rest of the properties. Most importantly, the value of the web page that we are embedding here. So where it currently says Google, we're going to once again apply the name Reuters.com/news/video. Okay, we're going to choose to keep these open. That keeps the socket open, and in fact, I'm not certain that we did that on the video dummy page, so let's just jump back into it and verify 100% if that has been applied. Yes, okay, it does, and that's what keeps that socket open. Now, an important note about this actually is that we enable you only to have one socket open at a time, if you will, when it comes to this embedded web app. The reason for that is it's just like what Apple does, where you can only have one app open at a time, or surfing in Safari only on one page at a time, because it would significantly slow down your iOS device if you have multiple sockets open at any given time. And we don't want to slow it down. Our software, technically we could do that if we enabled that to take place, but last thing we want is you guys in the field getting calls from the customer saying, hey, I'm so angry that you've slowed down my iPad, because even with the largest projects in Compass Control have, from our experience, never once slowed down the performance of an iPad or iPod Touch or iPhone. Okay, so now we look here and we could see the Reuters, and we just take one final confirmation of all of the properties here. If you need a login password, for example, for your IP cameras, you could enter that in this property here as well. And you know, it's nice we also give you this comments panel, so that if you had some information on that IP camera that you wanted to put in there as a note, maybe if you were testing a few things, yet you have one IP camera that for sure you want to implement in the project, and you could put that comment in this as a comments here, where really it's just a note that you could reference later down the line. And so actually at this time, you are able to go ahead and upload the project to your iPad. So we want to do one more thing before we do that, though, which is in order to give you the button that actually allows you to jump to that setup page. That setup page, you guys may have seen it in our system variables and whatnot. It is a page that exists in every project, just like your demo project there, where it says start, registration, and settings. The setup page is something that exists in every project on the iPad. We just got a link to it. And so how you do that actually is you move on over to our groups library. And we actually have it in the iPad landing tab, and we have the left navigate group. So I'm just going to take it and drag it onto our screen. Now you also have the right navigate group and the center navigate group as well that we can implement. So we take a look here, okay, and we will move it over to X position 0. Okay, and Y position 0, because you could see its width and height are 70 by 768, so we know it covers the entire height of the iPad. And by default, it has all of these buttons in it that really may or may not be necessary depending on your project. Let's go ahead and minimize a lot of these, this open tree here, so we could explore a little further into this left navigation group. Let's see here, closing these button groups and the control panels. Okay, and we'll expand our left navigation group here. And actually, as we look to see what this is made of, actually you see that there's a list. So actually this is a list, and every of these buttons in here is actually its own group within that list. Remember, you have to have groups inside of a list. You can't really have just buttons within that list. So we have zones, video, and you see as I select these, as I move through them, it actually causes our list to move here, so that that currently selected list is at list position number 1. Okay, so what I'm going to do is actually get rid of, just for the heck of it, get rid of everything except for setup. Okay, let's take a look at it. So we have setup and we have home, and you know, even if you wanted, you could put a little button in here that says web. If you wanted to use one of your that embedded web app as something that you do want to view in the widescreen from time to time, of course, then you would want to remove that automatic page jump that happened at 0.1 second, because it wouldn't allow you to stay in there. So so that's something that could also be done. I'm going to go ahead and again just remove even the home here and just have the setup. And we're going to look at the event and actions of that setup button. So let's move on over to events and actions here. And we actually, if we look at the list, there's a number of events and actions. Let's go to our setup button. Again, it's part of a group, so we got to open up that group to see the button. And we'll go ahead and remove these items just so we could do this on our own. And we want to have a page jump, just like we had utilized when we were doing our video dummy. And we don't want to go to the main page, do we? You could see here in our where we could specify our pages. Actually, we have the system pages listed in here as well with the pound. Okay, so we could go to our setup page, and that's really all you need to do, so that when we press that button, it's going to go to the setup page. Now, why did I make us do this here? Is so that you can actually have you can upload the project by pressing the registration button on that main setup page. You hit update project, and it's going to refresh on your iPad. Now, I guess a good time as ever here just to go over once again. You would need your device ID to be entered here, which is right here. What I'm referring to here is the iPad properties. So we press the iPad, we have the device ID here. Every iPad, every iOS device that has our app has its own unique identifier that is its device ID. In order to upload our project here that we've been working on onto that iPad, you do need to have that licensed, that iPad or iOS device licensed. So we would enter our device ID here. It is 12 characters long. Okay, you cannot have a space in the name of the iPad. Okay, something we've covered before. And then you go into the program and final option here, which says upload system project. We press that button. It asks you if you'd like to save. We go ahead and do that. And from here, it will ask you to enter your username and password, which are actually the same login and password that you have used all the while to gain your C1 certification, C2 certification, and now C3 certification to log into the Key Digital Dealer portal. In other words, we go ahead and upload, and you will, as we press OK, you will see a status window come up that monitors the upload status. I'm going to go ahead and hit cancel here though, but you can feel free to do that. And we're actually going to now look at a few additional simple system variables and system navigation groups that we have available to you in the software. So we want to go back into that groups library, and where we had the right navigate group, that is one that you've seen before. It does have a slider for volume, up, down, left, right, or up, down buttons as well. But a lot of you like to use, a lot of you would like to use, and we'll teach you how to implement this top navigate group. And this guy here, we'll put it in its approximate position. And we can take a look here, and we can see that it is, we look at the group, we could look at its properties. And it is 410 wide, where we know the iPad itself is 1024. So 1024 minus 410 equals 614. And so we want to divide that by 2 so we could find where to put this right smack in the middle. And looks like I was pretty close when I just dragged and dropped this thing. 313 it's at right now, but it'll need to be 307. And we'll just set our Y to be 0 so that it's right up against the top as we looked at that top left axis that we have referenced there. And let's once again collapse a few of these trees so that we can actually spend more time looking at this top navigate group. Okay. And what's inside this? Well, we have a slider that is actually the battery indicator. Okay. We have a a button here that it can serve. Many people use this to kind of to have the pop-up remotes show. That's why we call it show remote or remove remote button, so to minimize those pop-up remotes that we use sometimes. What I want to show you guys is going to be not as advanced, but I think instead just the bare basics of what we need here, and that is going to be the battery that we showed. Let's see. Let's lock these into place so that they don't continue opening on us. Okay. And so the battery, the remove remote button, I don't feel that we need to have for something like this project, but instead just trying to teach you guys what we need to, what you need at the minimum, I suppose, and that is the date text and the time text as well. And this button here that is facing downward, sometimes people use it as a quick page, if you will, maybe storing favorite channels in there, that sort of thing. I'm going to go ahead and remove that one as well from the project here, and we will show you how to use what we have remaining, which is the battery, the time, and the date, because that's all useful information here. So what we want to do to have the date, time, and battery icons working at the top there is actually we need to create 3 more very simple variables. Actually, these are considered system variables. So what does a system variable mean? Well, it's going to mean we need they will have the hashtag in the name. Okay, so it's going to link to something in the iPad itself. 2 of which are going to be string, meaning they contain text, and that will be the date variable. String, okay. We don't need to add any other properties to it. The percent time variable is also a string. Excuse me, not percent, the hash time, meaning again it links to the time within the iPad itself. And finally, the third variable that is not in fact a string is going to be hash battery, and that will be an integer type variable with limitations of say 0 through 99. We'll go ahead and apply those limitations. And actually, because this links to the iPad, the initial value is not important. We don't need to enter any initial value here. And as we look at these three variables, what do we want them to do? Well, just like we had the variable for the lighting setting on the bulb, we want to add an event in action. We want these variables to determine the properties of the date, time, and battery. And these are just a few out of many system variables that Compass Control supports that we do go over in future presentations. So these are going to be graphical properties that we're manipulating here. So we get to identify what the date variable is going to manipulate. That is located on the main page, and it is called date text. And it is determined by the its value is determined by the variable that is the system variable for the date. So the information within the iPad itself or the iOS device itself. And now we can go ahead and even just copy this one and paste it onto time here, because that's also another string. Add an event in action. Change value. And we do not want to manipulate the date text. Actually, we want to manipulate here the time text. And we want that time text to be in sync with the time system variable. So open up our drop-down list, and again, this is rather short list, makes things nice and easy for us. And now we could go over to our battery, add an event in action here. Paste. And this will be our battery slider. Not the battery icon, but the battery slider. And we want that to be in sync with our battery system variable. And just like that, all of those icons are naturally working for you. We could save our project, and now is a good time to upload to your iPad there and see those things before your very eyes.